All right, let me conduct a little prayer here.
Yes, sir.
Father God, in Jesus' name, thank you. We thank you, Lord, that you have given us this day, this morning to be alive. Thank you that you've made us men and you're calling us and putting us in charge of our families, Lord. You're counting on us. We cannot do this until you help us, until you help us to become better men. Lord, teach us. This is why we are here this morning. We surrender this meeting to you. We pray that you have your way. Speak to us, Lord. You desire that we become like you, servant leaders. You're going to teach us many ways of becoming servant leaders. So here we are, Lord, surrendered, humbled in your presence. Be with us, speak to us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. The lesson is 25 ways to be a servant leader.
I need pencils to
Need a pencil?
yes, sir.
Two of them?
I got my brother here today.
Three of them?
He needs a pencil.
I do hope. So who asked first? You asked first. So you give your
water.
Well, guys, can you believe it? We're on session 21 in our journey in authentic manhood. 21 sessions we've been together, and we have covered an immense volume of material. We started out, if you remember, by covering the kind of the history of manhood. Then we talked about our past. We talked about why we've become who we've become because of our family of origin. We talked about wounds that we suffered. We talked about friendships, vision. We had a session on the theology of manhood where we probed around in the beginnings of the scripture, the book of Genesis. We formulated a few weeks ago a definition, a solid biblical definition of manhood. And in the last few weeks, we've been covering men and women in general and marriage in particular. And so I just want you to know that we're on the home stretch. One thing I want you to do right here at the beginning, though, is don't forget your manhood plan. Everybody remember that? Your manhood plan? You don't need to forget that, especially because of the importance of graduation in relationship to it. So it's very, very vital that you do that. The first part, remember, looking back, you should have completed. The second part of the manhood plan, which is looking at now, should have been completed. And in these last few weeks, looking forward should be in process. Everybody clear about that? We said it all year. That's the one thing that we're going to ask you to do. Very important that you finish that manhood plan. Now, the last couple of weeks we've been talking about marriage, and we want to continue that and finish that today. And I want to give you a very fundamental principle that we've learned the whole time. I hope you have this embedded in your mind, and that is marriage at the core. Okay, jot this down. Marriage at the core is two equals with different functions. We put up a diagram about marriage, didn't we? In that marriage diagram, we talked about the husband and the wife and the roles they play. And I talked about that these were core roles and that they had core responses to one another, husband and wife, in relationship to those roles. And I just want to again mention to you, and everybody listen very carefully, when I spoke about the word core, it's so important that you hear this. When the scriptures outline the role of a man and woman in marriage, they're speaking to that small but essential ingredient that the husband and the wife bring together in that relationship. That's what it's focused on. Marriage at the core, the intimacy of a man and woman at the core. And for all of us, that core role responsibility is the same. What is wrapped around that core as a husband and wife for their individual lives and for their marriage in particular can be vastly different than anybody else's in the careers they pursue, in the interests they have, in the things that they invest themselves in. And all that is an elective of life, and that's part of the wonder of life. But at the core, there's sameness for a man and a woman. And those core responsibilities and those core roles and those core roles that they have towards one another are absolutely essential to the success of the marriage because they fit the man and the woman into a complementary relationship that brings success. So hear me when I say core versus comprehensive. For the wife, her core role is summarized in that title, helper. Remember that? The title, helper. She serves the marriage, and she's a servant of the marriage. She serves the marriage by assuming a nurturing role of care and support. That's vital for the relationship. And it's vital for the husband-wife interaction. And it's vital when children come along. And it's vital for launching a healthy next generation. That's how she serves at the core. The man's core role is summarized in the word head. And he's also a servant. And his role is to serve the marriage by assuming a leadership role of courage and responsibility. Because, guys, that's what it's going to take to accomplish the kind of responsibilities you've been given. It's going to take a lot of courage. So those are their two essential core roles where they complement one another over a lifetime. Now, we also learned last week as we were finishing up that a man who's skilled in the art of woman also knows how to meet the vital needs of his wife. And I gave you the four, what I think are the four top needs a woman has, not only in a dating relationship, but especially in a marriage relationship. Remember what they were? First one was this, companionship. She needs a friend that she can drink deeply with in relationship, because women are strong relational creatures. She needs security. She needs to know that she's safe in her relationship with her husband. And especially when that comes to finances. We talked a lot about that last week. She needs significance. She needs to know that she's valued. And that's why the response of praise and honor in that relationship from her husband to his wife is so important, because the woman in all the small things of the home and family needs to know how essential those are. And then she also needs emotional responsiveness. Women need emotional expressions. They need you to take the time to listen to them, express their world to you. They need to hear emotional expressions, especially the phrase, remember, I love you. And I hope that this last week you grabbed your wife, looked in her eyes and said, honey, I just want you to know, I love you. That's so vitally important to a relationship. These needs that a wife has that the husband says, I'm skilled at meeting those needs. Now, I could say a lot more about that. I've written a book, Rocking the Roles, Building a Win-Win Marriage. And especially for you younger guys just starting out in a marriage relationship, or you guys in maybe a serious dating relationship, can I recommend this to you and your fiance, or you and your wife as you're starting out? This will take you light years down the road. This fleshes out in much greater detail the things that we've been talking about the last 3 weeks. Rocking the Roles, Building a Win-Win Marriage. Now, saying all that, if we were to reduce all of this down just to a term and defining the man, his relationship to a woman, how he does it, we'd pull it down to just one term, a term that I've defined for you. I'd call the head, or the husband, the servant leader. There it is, servant leader. It's a noble title, guys. And for those men who will assume that title, it creates a noble adventure. But I want to be honest with you, it's an adventure that's both thrilling and terrifying all at the same time. It's a lot like flying a jet plane or being in a jet fighter plane. How many of you guys, if you had the opportunity to fly in a jet fighter today, would do it? Let me just see. Okay. Well, let me just read you the account of a guy who did that. His name's Rick Riley. And he had the opportunity to fly in a plane, and he tells us what it was like, because this is a lot like assuming the role servant leader. He says this: the U.S. Navy invited me to fly one of its F-14 Tomcats. I was thrilled. I was pumped. I was also toast. I should have known that when they told me my pilot would be Chip Biff King of Fighter Squadron 213, whatever you think he looks like, triple it. He's about 6 feet, tan, ice blue eyes, wavy surfer hair, finger crippling grip. The kind of guy who gargles nails. Biff's father, Jack King, was for years the voice of NASA's mission control. Biff was to fly me in that F-14 Tomcat, a ridiculously powerful $60 million weapon with nearly as much thrust as weight, not unlike golfer John Daly. I was worried about getting airsick, so the night before the flight, I asked Biff if there was something I should eat the next morning. Bananas, he said. For the potassium, I asked. No, Biff said, because they taste about the same coming up as they do going down. The next morning out on the tarmac, I had on my flight suit with my name sewn on the left breast. No call sign like Crash or Leadfoot, but still very cool. I carried my helmet in the crook of my arm as Biff had instructed. A fighter pilot named Psycho gave me a safety briefing and then fastened me into my ejection seat, which, when employed, would, quote, egress me out of the plane at such a velocity that I would immediately be knocked unconscious from the G-forces. Just as I was thinking about aborting this flight, the canopy closed over me, and Biff gave the ground crew a thumbs up. In minutes, we were firing nose up at 600 miles per hour. We leveled out, and then canopy rolled over another F-14. Those 20 minutes were the rush of my life. Unfortunately, the flight lasted 80 minutes. It was like being on a roller coaster at Six Flags, only without rails. We did barrel rolls, snap rolls, loops, yanks, and banks. We dived, rose high, and dived again, sometimes with a vertical velocity of 10,000 feet per whatever. We chased another F-14, and it chased us. We broke the speed of sound. Sea was sky, and sky was sea. Biff was absolutely cool, with a cast iron stomach and freon nerves. Flying at 200 feet, we did a 90-degree turn at 550 miles per hour, creating a G-force of 6.5 times my body weight. And immediately, I egressed the bananas. I also egressed the pizza from the night before and the lunch before that. In fact, I egressed a box of milk lunch from the 6th grade. I made Linda Blair from the movie The Exorcist look polite. Because of the G's, I was egressing stuff that did not even want to be egressed. I went through not one air sick bag, but two. Biff said I passed out twice. I was coated in sweat at one point as we were coming in upside down in a bank curve on a mock bombing target, and the G's were flattening me like a tortilla, and I was in and out of consciousness. I realized that I was the first person in history to throw down. A week later, when the spinning finally stopped, Biff called. He said he and the fighter pilots had the perfect call sign now for me. Said he had sent it on a patch for my flight suit. What is it, I asked. 2 bags, he said. Well, you know what? When you begin to think of servant leaders, you look at that term up there on the screen, it sounds great on the ground. But when you take it into the air, it has a whole different feeling altogether. In fact, I want you to know, guys, the term servant leader in flight can be overwhelming. So I want to warn you, I'm going to move through today fairly quickly 25 ways to be a servant leader. But as we move through this, some of you are going to lose your bananas. Some of you are going to go unconscious. Some of you are going to feel like the whole world's spinning upside down because this will feel so overwhelming. So I have a word for you right at the beginning before we start moving through this list, this detailed list of practically applying servant leadership in real flight. Here's the word I want you to know. What I'm about to give you is an outline for life, an outline for a lifetime, not a to-do list for this week. Everybody get that? This is not a to-do list for this week, so don't get overwhelmed. This is an outline for a lifetime, so you need to relax. Nevertheless, I'm going to take you up for a little test flight run, okay? We're going to get in the canopy, fire up the engines, and take off. I want to give you 25 ways to be a servant leader, practically, in the real day-to-day of life. Here's the first one. A servant leader includes his wife in envisioning the future. It's so important that you men know where you're going in your relationship with your wife. You're not just living in the panic of the day-to-day. So many guys live their married life just reacting to what's right in front of them. But if you are a servant leader, you're taking this marriage relationship and the children that flow from it somewhere. And here's the question: to where? It's your responsibility as a man to work with your wife in formulating a future that both of you are excited about sacrificing for and living for. Now, what that's going to mean is in the day-to-day of life, you're going to periodically have to pull out and get away and sit down and look at each other in the eye and start asking some questions like, where do we want to go in this relationship? What do we want our kids to look like? What are the things that we want to do in this marriage, to have in this marriage, to enjoy in this marriage? That requires getting away and talking about it, because the one thing that you want is not just to talk about it, but to agree upon it together so you can fight for it when you get back home. One of the best little tools that I've ever seen is the one that one of our pastors here, Bill Wellens, wrote, Getting Away to Get It Together. And I'm just going to recommend it to you. It's just a real simple outline of how to have a 2 or 3 day getaway where you sit down and just lists questions and gives some things to talk about, where you begin to shape your future together as a husband and wife. But envisioning the future of taking your relationship somewhere, let me tell you something, guys. That's your responsibility. That's part of flying lead in the marriage. But a servant leader will envision the future for his wife and help work with her to agree together on where they're going. Secondly, a servant leader accepts spiritual responsibility for the family. Did you know if 100 individual kids came to this church, over time, about 20 families would follow? Sometimes I'll talk to a couple and they'll say, yeah, our son or daughter came to the church and they got so excited about it, we finally came. But they did a survey and found out if 100 kids, individual kids come to a church, about 20 to 25 families come later. If 100 wives individually came to this church, about 20 families would follow. If 100 husbands individually came to this church, the survey discovered 97 families would follow. Guys, you are the pace setter for your family spiritually. Every once in a while, I'll have an individual talk to me, a man will be talking, and say, you know, my wife, she's the spiritual one of the family. And I have to hold myself back at that point, because what I really want to do is just lean forward across the table and go, why? Why? Do you think that absolves you from that? See, it's your role as a man to be in tandem with your wife. You're the one who should be talking about the importance of church and how often we attend. You should be one of the ones who has the courage to initiate spiritual discussions. You should be the one who is growing deep enough in God's Word that when it comes to major decisions and issues in life, you can bring spiritual perspective into that decision making. That's your responsibility. It's so important that you accept that responsibility. That's a courageous thing to do. But it's so important that you do it, because a servant leader accepts spiritual responsibility for his family. Third, a spiritual leader is one who's willing to say, I'm sorry, and forgive me to his family. I learned this kind of in a hard-edged way when my daughter was 10 years old, Rebecca, and I had had a miserable week, and life just seemed to be getting harder and harder. Now, I'm the pastor of the church, and I was in there thinking I was in a room all by myself, and I was so mad I had my briefcase, and I threw it down and went, damn it! And then I looked up, and there's my 10-year-old daughter with her pastor father saying, damn it. What do you do in a moment like that? Because there'll be moments of humiliation just like that for every leader. what you do is you go like I did that day, by God's grace, and you just get down on your knees and look them right in the eye and say, would you forgive me? And you know what they do? They forgive you. And you can move on. The same discussion I had with a group of dads not long ago who are all divorced. Their kids are all over the country. Some of them see them just on weekends. They were talking and asking me, what do you do? And when you get together, what do you say? You know, it's so easy to get together and, you know, mom's now at a distance and, you know, it's real easy to want to get in a conversation to justify where you are and what you're doing and why, you know, you are the way you are. And I just tell the guys, listen, you know what the best thing you can do for your child if you're separated like that? Is at some point when it's appropriate, regardless of who was at fault and who said what and how all that came about, you just need to look them in the eye and say, I am so sorry we got divorced. Would you forgive me? That's what they need to hear. And a person who is pursuing servant leadership will use the terms frequently, I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? Number 4, a servant leader discusses household responsibilities with his wife and makes sure they're fairly distributed. A good question, I think, for a servant leader to ask is, after 5 p.m., is the workload fair? Because it's real easy for a guy to think that when he comes home, the day is over. No, is the workload fair? That's the question he needs to be asking. And over time, there's going to be the need from time to time to reassess who does what around the home, especially when kids come along. And when the kids get old enough, it's good for them to take charge of their responsibility to the home as well. 5th, a servant leader seeks the consultation of his wife on all major financial responsibilities. Don't surprise your wife with that new car without her knowing about it. And worse, don't surprise her with the new bass boat. She needs to be included, a wife needs to be included, even if she is not inclined towards money and thinks you're just going to take care of it. Don't let her excuse herself from the financial decisions. She needs to be a part of all major financial decisions, all major financial investments, all financial decisions about giving, about budgeting. She needs to be educated in it and part of that and in tandem with you on that. It really would be good and excellent for every couple to have established some, what I think are some sound biblical financial principles as well. So when they are making those decisions, they have some common ground on which to have that particular discussion. But a servant leader will always include his wife on all major financial decisions. 6th, a servant leader will follow through with commitments he has made to his wife. His word to his wife is extremely important. He wants it to be golden because it inspires in her the key word for an intimate relationship, which is trust. And trust is the super glue of any relationship. 7th, a servant leader anticipates the different seasons of his marriage. He understands that marriage is going to change from season to season, so he anticipates the different seasons his marriage will pass through. I hope you know that every marriage is, in fact, a series of little marriages. Did you know that? That are butted up against one another. One psychologist said that a long-term marriage is really serial monogamy.
Right.
And I want you to know, in the first marriage of my marriage, which was marriage without children, I did really good. We traveled, we had fun. But when I got married the second time in that marriage, when children came along, I didn't do too good. Especially when the second child came along. That was the lowest point in our married life. And part of the reason for that is because I was still operating on principles from the previous season, thinking that the house should be clean and my wife should be sexy and available to me, even though she was spending most of her day running around with a rug rat during the day and up with a newborn at night. And I wanted that and everything else. And it doesn't work. And I was out of perspective. And I was almost out of the house. And now here I am at 53 years old, and I've got 2 years before we're empty nesters. And when that last child leaves for college, we're going to enter into another marriage. It's called married without children. And how well we anticipate all that's involved there, because that's going to change our relationship. It's especially going to change my wife's relationship when she doesn't have breakfast to cook for children and things to clean up and places to go with them. It's going to require adjustments. Every marriage is a series of marriages. And a good servant leader will anticipate the next season coming up and the changes that need to be made in order to make that next season as effective, hopefully, and as successful as the previous one. 8, a servant leader anticipates the different stages his children will pass through. And his leadership must adjust to those stages. Did you know when your kids are young, basically your face towards them as a dad is that of a coach? Sometimes a strong coach, a coach who's saying, do this, don't do that, giving directions and barking out orders and stuff like that. When they become teenagers, you can't be a coach anymore. You've got to change to being more of a counselor, one who's there to listen, to empathize, to be a part of all the emotion that's going through those years, and to offer advice in ways that they can receive it. If you try to be a coach with a teenager, you're going to lose. And then when they get in their college years and their opening years out in the work world, you move more to a consultant role. You're not even a counselor anymore. Consultant is somebody who is invited in, doesn't butt in, gets invited in to give information, right? And that's your face for a season. And hopefully if you navigate that well as they move into married life, then you move from a consultant to a colleague, a trusted friend. But a servant leader looks at his children and he understands that there's a real skill involved in interacting with the children that have been entrusted under me. 9th, a servant leader frequently tells his wife what he likes about her. That's one of those small but what I call high-octane skills that a true servant leader possesses that elevates his game. I love basketball, and one of the moves that I love in basketball most, there's only a few players who do it really well. Magic Johnson was probably one of the best, is the no-look pass. You guys, don't you love a no-look pass? A guy driving into the lane and just dishing it unexpected to a guy right there into the goal where he can score. You know what the no-look pass is for a servant leader? It's when out of the blue he turns to his wife. Just out of the blue. They might be walking in the mall, or she may be there washing the dishes, and he just comes and puts his arm around her and says, you know what I really like about you? And then he tells her. Now let me tell you, that's the no-look pass of marriage. And a husband, a wise husband, is one who possesses that finesse in relationship to the woman he loves, and that just gives life to her soul. 10th, a servant leader provides financially for his family's basic living expenses. We talked a lot about that last week, so I'm not going to cover that anymore. I just want you to know it's so very important that a wife knows that she's safe financially with a man. And when she feels that, she admires and trusts him and gives him that admiration which he desperately wants for his life. When he doesn't do it, he can sense it in her face, and it hurts him. I'm not living up to your expectation. 11, a servant leader deals with distractions so he can talk with his wife and family. He can have real interaction, which means, and guys, this is the big challenge, it means you need to initiate some TV-free evenings. I told you you'd lose your bananas, didn't I? I'm talking about times where it's just quiet around the house. We can talk, or where you date your children or date your wife on a weekly basis, where you take them out, just you and them in an undistracted way, and you just talk. You ask them questions. You learn a series of what I call kind of consulting questions. Tell me how you're doing. Tell me what's going on in your life. Tell me what you're feeling. How are you doing with your friends? Tell me what's going on at school. It's kind of an interview, but you're getting into their life and you're allowing them to get into yours. A servant leader is a person who wants to stay in touch, but to stay in touch, he's got to initiate. He's got to actually take action in this frenzied world to get the distractions out so he can hear what's really going on. 12, a servant leader prays with his wife on a regular basis. And guys, you might just write down, for most men, this is absolutely intimidating. So if you feel like, gosh, that's hard for me, you're not the only guy. About 99% of the guys in the room feel intimidated in praying with their wife. The thing I encourage guys to do is, first of all, just have a prayer life of your own. Sometimes you just need to pray out loud and hear yourself praying. Maybe pray around the table, but there comes a moment, it's really a crucial moment, where you take the initiative and kind of step out there and you say, would you pray with me? And let me tell you, when you do that, when you have the courage to lead courageously like that, when you take that step, you enter into a ground of intimacy that is absolutely incredible. But to get there, you have to take the lead. Number 13, a servant leader initiates meaningful family traditions. Besides special holiday traditions, probably the most meaningful traditions we've done in our home is the traditions that we've set up and the ceremonies around them to initiate and call our sons and daughters into manhood and womanhood. And those are traditions and ceremonies I'm going to be sharing with you over the next 3 weeks, so I'll not go into them now, but I just want you to know those are some of the most exciting moments in raising a son and raising a daughter, is to have these moments along the way where you help them craft their manhood and womanhood. Those are the greatest traditions we've created in our home, and I can't wait to tell you about them in the weeks to come. Number 14, a servant leader initiates what I call fun outings for his family on a regular basis. Part of your job is to keep laughter in the home. I hope you're a guy who has fun with your family. And it's whether it's games you play, whatever it might be, it's so important to keep that in the home. I know when my kids were a little younger, one of the things that we did on a fairly regular basis was go bowling. And my son, even now, he'll bring that up. When are we going to go bowling again? Because bowling to him was all of us being together, out of the home, playing together as a whole family, where mom could participate, the girls could participate, we'd compete, we'd form teams. He loved that, and they loved that. And we still have stories about those kind of things. But it's important to do that, to keep fun in the home. It's also important, to create these great memory adventures of fun. When my mom died a number of years ago, she left a little small inheritance to us as a family. And I remember when I first got that, one of my first thoughts was that, we could maybe pay off some bills or buy a new car. At least that's what I was thinking about initially, something real practical like that. But what I did is I got the whole family in here and said, we've got this from Mom. This is what she left us. What would you all like to do with it? And we talked about that. And eventually we settled on taking all that money and just taking the kids to Europe. They'd never been to Europe. And just spending it all on 2 weeks of fun. And I can remember standing in Paris with my son watching the Tour de France, the last part of that race. And just thinking, we're making memories for a lifetime. And it's still one of the things they remember. They talk about walking through the Louvre and, going through Switzerland and climbing mountains and taking that train ride through the Alps and all that. And I'm so grateful to my mom for having provided that. But it was a fun outing that made a mountainous memory for a lifetime. That's part of what our job is as servant leaders. Number 15, a servant leader takes the time to give his children practical instructions about life, which in turn give them confidence with their peers. Guys, listen to me. Don't let your child guess at life. Don't make them guess. It makes them feel foolish. You need to teach them basic things, and sometimes we forget that they don't just naturally pick up the basic things. You need to teach your son how to tie a tie so it looks good. So when he's at school, it's not hanging off his neck and guys are making fun of him. You need to teach him how to dribble the basketball. You need to teach them how to fill out a checkbook. You need to teach them how to change their oil and inflate their tires. You need to teach them how to write nice thank you notes to people who do things to them. You need to teach them how to give a handshake so it feels firm. Those are just basic things. How to make up the bed where it really looks good. You know, how to care for an animal if they have a pet. How to interact with a woman, how to call them, what to do when they're on a date. Those are kind of just simple things, but you know what it does? It takes the clumsiness out of life and it inspires confidence rather than anger and frustration. And that's part of being a dad. It's part of being a servant leader. Number 16, a servant leader manages the schedule of the home and anticipates any pressure points. And by the way, in the frenzied pace of the 21st century, that in itself is an unbelievable challenge. Number 17, a servant leader keeps his family financially sound and out of harmful debt. Do you know the number one cause of marital difficulties is finances? It's one of the primary causes of family breakups is around finances. So this is a big, big issue. And I remember when I was first married, and I didn't have a clue about how to be married. But I do remember an older gentleman in the church that I was attending at the time, who I respected, knowing I was going to get married, came up to me one day and said, "Hey, I got a piece of advice for you when you get married." I said, "Great. What is it?" He said, "Stay out of debt." And I held on to that all the way through my early years, especially when I was in seminary, when we had very, very little to draw off on. One of the things that we committed to, that we were not going to go into debt. And that has, listen, that has blessed our marriage. Now, I know there's places for appropriate debt. I'm talking about harmful debt. And for you young guys who want it all by the time you're 25, you're going to have it all and more, but you're not going to like it. Okay? So I just want to encourage you as a servant leader, don't get into harmful debt. That means uncontrolled spending. There has to be reins on that. There has to be reasonable objectives. Over time, life will provide for you a lot of wonderful things at the appropriate time. Don't overspend to get them at the inappropriate time. That would be my encouragement to you as a servant leader. Number 18, a servant leader makes sure he and his wife have drawn up a will and arranged a well-conceived plan for their children in case of death. Do you have a will, guys? What would happen to your wife and children if you were to die today? Let's say you were pulling out of the parking lot and you were killed. What would happen to them? Do you have a plan? Is it well drawn out and clear? And here's probably the best question. At the funeral, after the funeral's over, your wife is leaving or your wife and children are leaving, with what you've left them, would they say thank you? That's what I mean by a well-conceived will. Number 19, a servant leader lets his wife and children into the interior of his life. You know, one of the best ways you can let your children into your life is tell them stories. Tell them stories of, make it fun. Tell them what you did when you were growing up and make it into a story. That lets them get to experience you when you were young. You know, my kids love to hear me tell the crazy things that I did growing up. You know, when we're at the Holiday Inn in Ruston, Louisiana, they walk over there and they go, "Dad, is this where you went skinny dipping when you were in high school?" Because they remember me telling that story. And they said, "Boy, that was stupid because the office is only 15 feet away." And then my son says, "No wonder you were arrested." Yeah, I was. But tell them stories. Share with them. Interact with them over your life. And open your heart to your wife. Ask yourself, am I telling my wife what I'm feeling? See, if you don't, they'll sense it. Because men have a tendency to take their feelings and go into their cave and just stay there. And the wife is left guessing. And what that creates is distance between you. When what she needs is for you to come out and share your heart. Number 20, a servant leader honors his wife often in public. It's another no-look pass when a man builds up his wife in front of others. You know, on our 20th wedding anniversary, right here on this stage, I did something that made a great memory in this regard. It was at the end of the church service, and I was preaching on something, but I surprised my wife by having her come out of the audience. She didn't know, and come up. And there on our wedding anniversary, I had framed a poem that I had taken a half a day to write about our life and about how much I loved and admired her. And in front of the congregation, I read that poem. Now, here's what I want you to know. The frame cost me $25. The poem cost me about 3.5 hours of my time. The moment was priceless. And it still is. It's still there hanging on our wall. And that's what I want you to know. That's what a servant leader does. He honors his wife. And one of the great no-looks you can give to your wife is be out with a group of people and just drop a compliment about your wife in front of the others. Doesn't my wife look wonderful tonight? You know, my wife is one of the kindest people I know. Look how pretty my wife looks here tonight. When you do that, you invest gold into the relationship. Let me encourage you to do that and be a skilled servant leader. Number 21, a servant leader explains sex to his children in a way that gives them a wholesome perspective. Years ago, I bought the Jim Dobson series, Preparing for Adolescence, and it talks about friendships and emotions as a kid's going through puberty. One of the sessions there is about sex. My wife did that with our 2 daughters. I did it with my 2 sons. And let me tell you guys, one of the great moments I still remember is laying on the bed with my son in the dark as we were listening to that tape series, and when it went off, he said, "Dad, I got some other questions." And we had the opportunity to talk very intimately at a very critical time in his life about the sexual experience and the differences between men and women and what that meant and how to hold it sacred. And the taking out the physical myths and putting in solid physical truth. It's a wonderful thing for a dad to do that, but that takes courage and it takes time. You know, those tapes, that was once a week for 7 weeks to walk through that with my son. But it's what a dad does when he's a servant leader. Number 22, a servant leader encourages his wife to grow as an individual. From time to time, he'll ask her, "What else would you like to do with your life? What are your dreams?" And he lets her express those, and where he can apply applications, he does. He tries to make a lot of those dreams her reality, because part of your role as a man is to help your wife to become all that she was meant to be. Number 23, a servant leader takes the lead in establishing with his wife sound, biblically supportable family values. This kind of goes along with envisioning the future. But what are the values that you hold together as a husband and wife? You know, that may sound easy, but it's hard. What do you hold? What are your common values about money, about marriage, about God, about life in general and the issues about life, divorce, alcohol, debt, those kind of things? You know, it's really important that 2 agree, because the Scripture says unless 2 are agreed, how can they walk together? I tell you, the big kicker is when you ask the question, what are the specific values we want our children to leave home with? Can we articulate those? They're driving away for the last time into life with what values? Can you name them? The ones that you really want them to hold on to? See, you need to be specific and clear about those, and a husband and wife need to agree upon those in order to be able to deposit those, not only in their own marriage, but in the lives of their children. Number 24, a servant leader joins a small group of men who are dedicated to improving their skills as a man, husband, and father. And guys, you can check this one off because you're doing that right here, so congratulations. And then finally, a servant leader provides time for his wife to pursue her own personal interest. The reason I put that there last is because we all need our space. But here's a good rule of thumb. Whatever space you provide for yourself, to pursue your own interest, your wife needs equal time to pursue her interest. Now, those are just 25 specific practical things to be a servant leader. There are probably more, but those are the ones. If I had you just individually and we're just sitting there and you're saying, well, tell me how to do this, that's what I would tell you. This is what it means to be a servant leader, and it's both thrilling and terrifying, isn't it, guys? And so you've taken this initial test flight, so what do I call you, 2 bags?
Yeah.
Let me just tell you this. Remember, we're talking about an outline for a lifetime. Everybody look up at me, and Bill will finish us out here this morning. If you will look at these things and consider them and apply your own life to them over the years to come, and you stay with it, I have a promise for you. One day in the mail, a patch is going to arrive for your flight suit. And you know what's going to be on that patch? These 2 words: real man. And it'll be deeply satisfying. Next week, we're going to talk about how to raise a son into manhood.
All right. Good lesson. Great lesson. Probably one of the, most, legacy building lessons. Legacy. Because if we became those things, 25 of them, oh my God. I don't know what you had. That was a lot that he gave us. Nuggets for life, a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. So, what do you think about this lesson? I know we have 2 guys that we have not been with. I made you write names, but there are people here who would like to hear that name. What's your name, sir?
My name is Damon Robinson. Nice to meet you, everybody.
Hey, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Pleasure to be here.
My name is Jabril Morris. I was actually invited by my friend Ernell. Yeah, he's been talking to me about it for a while now. So to be able to finally be here is feels good. It's great. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, sir. Maybe you don't know all guys here. So who are you?
I'm Damien Ray. Nice to meet you guys.
Ernell. Richard White.
Soldier.
Robbie Bird. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And Stanley Karanja. It's my pleasure to do this, and we can do this all over again. But guess what? He said we are on a home stretch. This is lesson number 21 out of 24. And guess what? I'm already purchased for book number 2. It's called Winning at Work and at Home. If I were you, I would order book number 2.
Okay.
If you're new to the class, I'm gonna teach this again. As soon as your group ends, I'm beginning to recruit anew. So let them know that those that were never here, let them know we're going to do this all over again. As you and I go right here. And then after here, hey, I would like to enter some kind of adventure. This one is called the greatest adventure. So if you have been there, done that, all that you wanted to do, why can't you have some adventure? These guys look like they are somewhere high in the seas and doing stuff.
I'm not that. Whitewater rafting? Yeah. You see the word white in front of it.
Well, this is a picture or an image of some adventure.
Gotcha.
Last night I sat down with a bunch of 8 other professionals. Guess what we were discussing? 8 other professionals. I was the only counselor. There were nurses practitioners there. There were doctors, medical doctors. There were anesthesiologists. What do you call that?
Anesthesia.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All those kind of people. And we were planning a medical mission. Nice. That's an adventure.
That is an adventure.
So we say, obviously it's Kenya. And I think it's being planned for April next year or something like that. We say we will approach the county government in a certain place and sell the idea, give us a school, an elementary school. We're gonna put camp there. I'll be there as a counselor. Anybody with counseling needs, I'll give 30 minutes counseling sessions, free of charge. We'll do it a whole morning. In the afternoon, we'll do a crusade meeting. Do you know what a crusade meeting is?
No.
It's a big meeting that is attended and we talk about Christ.
Okay.
And we'll do that like a whole week. And harvest for Christ. But also meet counseling needs, medical needs, whatever needs there are there. Now it takes planning, it takes money, it takes time and all that. But tell me what it is, then it is an adventure. Awesome. For the cause of Christ. Those are the kind of things that I'm telling you. They cannot be done by everybody and not at every stage of life. But at the stage I am in, I want to do that. Because you heard them say, write a will. One day you won't be here, right?
Right.
I mean, this lesson was revolutionary. It was so much and so much insightful. But anyway, if you turn to page number 74, look back over the list of 25 ways to be a servant leader. Which one or 2 ways stood out to you as a must do to improve your servant leadership? Explain. I think that one of writing a will, it stood out to me. I have had a kid in my office for now. You all remember that I told you one day that I had an accident? And that accident happened early this year. I always had a kid waiting to be written as a will. And that time I came and pulled it out, but I've never completed it. So that's why I'm telling you that one of writing a will stood out so well. Then I was reminded times when we used to do fun activities. Fun, number 14. A servant leader plans fun outings for the family on a regular basis, e.g. doing bowling or doing some kind of competing things. Let me tell you this, I've been trying to find some hobby that my wife and I can do. Been pursuing the girl to accept to be taught how to ride a bike. And I'll be the one to teach her, and then we can buy 2 bikes and be riding. So just something we can do. But how about with children? I remember when we all were home together, we would go to a field and we would divide ourselves into 2 teams. So my family is 6 because I have 2 daughters and 2 sons. So a team of 3 and 3. And then one of you become a goalkeeper, the other one become a goalkeeper, and then there are these 2 guys in the middle now play soccer. We used to do that. We would make sure that one side there's the men, because there are how many 3 men. We would try to mix it up somehow and make it even. And that was fun, but now they are gone. So the greatest we do now is to plan a trip together. We had done 2 trips to Florida. Right now we are dreaming of a trip that we will make to Kenya. And when we get there, I plan to do something called a safari. Have you heard of a safari? A safari is you rent a van and you go to where the wild animals are, a game reserve, and you go seeing them. You go that way with your family.
That doesn't sound
You
exciting.
bonding together. Yeah,
No, I said it doesn't.
it doesn't seem good.
Sounds dangerous.
No. People do that all the time.
Is it not-
There
I get what
game-
he's saying. He's
there are
like,
game rangers.
No, I understand. It's not my gig. I don't.
yeah, it's like the wild stays
Like
there.
they drive and stuff.
Yeah, I don't need that up close. I got HD TV.
So that is not yours.
Right.
I'm
with you.
That's something I want to do. Anyway, back to you. Question number one.
All right, so I got question number one, I got number 8, which is the servant leader anticipate different stages of his child's life. Now, that stuck out to me because I haven't done a good job with that with my 3 older daughters because I'm learning a lot about this later on in life. So as I look back, I noticed those changes happened, but I wasn't present to anticipate the transition, if that makes sense. Doing a much better job with my son. He's only 5. You know, way better job with that guy. But the other ones, that's 18, 19, and 20, I missed a lot of those anticipation of transition. So I'm probably gonna do a little backup job and try to fill in a few of those gaps. But that's what stuck out to me.
Thank you. I caught the last part that you're gonna make an attempt.
Yes, yes. I realized that
Don't give up.
I'm missing transition.
Don't give up. Become creative. See what you can do. Tell you what, when I was still a very young husband and father, because I was into Christ, somebody introduced something very sweet. That learn to date your children.
I like that.
Date them. So you tell him, I'm going out with you, I'll buy a meal, and we just sit. We just sit and we're eating. And just when we are there, the kid can ask anything. You can discuss anything. It's not you telling them, lecturing them. It's just allowing that thing to flow, whatever it is. I found us sitting in a restaurant with my daughters discussing boyfriends and boyfriend issues.
Yes.
What are you going through? What are they telling you? What is happening? And they'll tell me, one of the things they have said is that there are no men that are like you. And that makes me. So I end up praying with them and telling them, you know what? Men are there. It's only that you haven't met them. Don't give up.
Oh, man, my
Don't give up.
daughters told me that they're having issues with finding out men like other men.
Yes.
Like that's like a new thing for
Mhm.
these younger kids growing up. We didn't necessarily have to worry about per se,
Mhm.
but now that it's so open, it's like they got a whole different dynamic to
Mhm.
worry about with men. I didn't even know that to having that type of conversation with them, or just sitting down at lunch. So
So-
definitely get stuff from those conversations.
Yes. So date your children.
Yes.
And as you date them, make sure you regulate. You not. So if a child, if somebody is already into adulthood, there's a different style than when they are 14. You know, you regulate it. At one point, you are a coach, but at another stage, you are a consultant. Like there's no way I can succeed trying to coach my daughters who are 33 and 30. No. But I can do that to my 19-year-old. One thing that I've been blessed with is I was fortunate to teach everybody in my family how to drive. I taught my wife. It was very hard. That was the hardest. And then I taught my first daughter, taught my second daughter, taught my third child, which is my son. And right now, we are on the campaign of making my child pass his driver's test. He failed once. Because he backed into that thing, the cord. So, but he know how to drive. We went to James Madison University, which is in Virginia, last weekend. Well, when we were driving, they were asleep in the morning, but coming back and it was night, my son drove us from Harrisonburg, Virginia, all the way to Augusta. A good stretch, and it was at night. So I told him, when you get worn out, let me know. And he drove that thing into me. I'm gonna drive until I see 70, and he did. And he didn't make a mistake, he didn't make amends. and he didn't get scared of those huge trucks.
Yeah.
That builds me. You know, those are the kind of adventures that I have done with my kids. If you don't do something, don't feel rebuked. Don't feel. That's why you're in this class. Pick something you can do. Yep. So, question one, please, let's talk. Yes, sir.
So one of the things that stuck out to me was the no look pass. You know, complimenting your significant other. And the reason why it stuck out to me was because I kind of like put myself in that situation. Like if she just complimented me out of nowhere, you know, I'd be like, oh, okay, thank you. So I'm
All
woman fuzzy, right? So, and I understand the importance of it. So why not make somebody else feel the way I would want to feel? So, you know, and I understand the moments when I give her big compliments. Giving them little ones here and there, she's gonna be like, oh, okay. You know, she's gonna be brighter, her day's gonna be brighter. So that's one thing that really stuck out to me. And I'm definitely gonna make an effort to continue those no look passes. So
Nice. Thank you so much. So, look, the one thing that I would give you as a tip, I know Philip has been married longer than I am, but there's something I have learned. Surprising your spouse is so key. Planning a surprise for your spouse. Did I tell you one day when we were just about to be 25 years married, I planned a trip to Charlotte, North Carolina. All I told my wife is we're gonna go out, and I never told her where we're going. So I told her, make sure you pack a few clothes in a little box. So I took the car and headed south. Pulled into BWI Park, you know, whatever airport, into the long term. She doesn't know where we go. We jumped into the bus and we went in, and I told her we're taking a flight. To where? We went to the aircraft. She doesn't know. She only got to know now, of course, when we had to go through what. But that weekend was revolutionary. Then we spent, yeah, because I had planned things that she never knew.
Nice.
There are museums in Charlotte. There are things. There's a stadium there. All kind of fun things, and we were there Sunday to Thursday. When we came back to Baltimore, I had planned our 25th marriage anniversary. That's when my second ring came to me. I have 2 rings. They are not fake. This is marriage. This is anniversary, 25 year anniversary. We are now 33. So do you know how long ago that is? The one that it's like what, 8 years ago? Please choose ways to make your marriage young and exciting and fun. She had pulled major surprises on me. When I was turning 50, I'm 62. When I was turning 50, behind me, she planned my 50th marriage anniversary. I had no clue. And all of a sudden, we had gone, that day was a Saturday, we were doing a couple seminar. I was teaching. I had my own, I don't remember what kind of a suit, how can I call it? What is brown? Something. She had made sure that I would dress on that because it is getting towards, I think, gold. Whatever she had chosen is close to gold, and she had said, you wear this. When we were coming back to the house, she said, I'm gonna drive. She drove the car. And she went a different direction from our house, delaying, only to realize that the same guys I was speaking to will end up in our house, and she was giving them time to arrive. So when I went to the house, I entered the house, I was met with surprise. And there was like over 100 people in our house. You know, sitting everywhere. They were sitting everywhere.
Okay.
And it was an anniversary. It was a birthday. It was everything in it. Everything in it. And there was even a preaching. There was Holy Communion. There was everything planned. She pulled a big surprise. And they put a crown on me, written 50. So when people pull surprises like those, what can you say but just to laugh?
Yeah.
She has pulled major surprises for me. You see these things that I've refused to remove from this office. This was my graduation, my doctoral graduation. She planned it, and there was a 3 to 4 hour service right here, and it was international. Because people, it was during the pandemic, so people were not bringing in people except very few, but we were with people all over, wherever we have been, wherever people know us. Kenya, Canada, England, they were here on that Zoom. So if there can be surprises, they increase the longevity of your relationship. The one thing you can do is to become too familiar with her because they say familiarity brings what?
Contempt.
Yeah, I mean, allow surprises and some things to renew the relationship. And it's not just you and your wife, but it is you and your children. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? Number one? Number one is very sweet, by the way. It's very sweet. Philip.
You bring up a lot of memories. When you mentioned surprises, I did my first surprise to my wife, and we were expecting twins. Could have been triplets, but didn't go that far. But I was at a Christmas party. That was a reason to leave the house. So my friends were given the keys to the house, went in and rearranged the whole house. That's the most memorable surprise I can think of my wife, and she was just totally surprised. I thought she was going to deliver it right on the spot. When we went in the house, she said, I think something's wrong. I said, there were certain lights that were turned on that I knew they were turned on. I wonder if somebody broke into the house. So I said, well, I'll go in first. If something happens, you can run. So and everybody's sitting around in our basement, and then we rearranged the whole house for a big shower party for my wife. And it's the most memorable thing I can remember. There were two heavyset couples who were sitting in a box, and they were pretending to be the two babies.
That's nice.
But memories are really important. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that are brought out today to bring up to speed, because I've been, in my life, I'm 73, okay? And I'm at tail end of my working career, but to make a long story short, a lot of things that have been brought up, are things I've missed opportunities from. I have 2 grown daughters now. They have families of their own. And I need to be more inclusive in my thoughts and my activities, not only for my wife, but my daughters. I'm going through right now through a series of physical disability in terms of issues with my backs, and it's made it impossible to really do a lot of things. But we had a family get together this past 4th of July. Family members from New York came down. We had like 40 people. And, people just having an enjoyable time, and it's something that I've been remiss in not including activities with family. We've allowed COVID to be too much involved in our lives, and we've just isolated ourselves. We're planning another trip to Virginia, where our first Stella Cycle family is going to meet together. We meet annually, and I'm going to make some changes on what we do and how we dialogue with each other. I think the worst thing is that I've isolated myself from other people and stopped dialogue. This meeting with you all and listening to what a man needs to be about has changed my thinking. I may be 73, but I feel like I need to be 23 again.
Amen.
Start living life and be more integrated.
Indeed.
You know what, Philip, you make me feel good that we can have a 73-year-old man hanging out with us.
Yes.
This is huge. This is real good. So please keep on being with us. And there is no way that you will not find these tips, applicable, even to your grandchildren.
Right.
And the men that have married your daughters, there are things to do with them.
Mhm.
Question number, and by the way, I wanted to say this. Some of the men, like Arnell here, with beginning out, let's say in the marriage scenario, these things will bless you, brother.
Yes, they will.
I mean,
I can agree.
hearing these things at the beginning of a marriage,
Yes.
hey, because some of
Right,
us are hearing them a little later, right? You can see some things are really saying at the back end, but hearing these things at the beginning, you implement you work on the 25 things. You will look back later on and say, wow, I didn't like that. I heard that and I put it into practice. I heard that and I put that into practice. Now, question 2. What on this list of 25 intimidates you the most and why? Now, I'm gonna quickly go into number 21. See 21? A servant leader explains sex to each child in a way that gives them a wholesome perspective. It's a little hard to teach children about sex, right? Doesn't that sound intimidating? How do you do it?
YouTube, look like.
That may be the kingdom.
But there can be ways. So me, the way I do it, I create a question and answer time. And we're not just talking about that, but I would love a question on that. I would love a question on that. Because there are myths about sex. So maybe you trying to undo the myth, whatever myth there is.
Well, there's a different dynamic for kids these days growing up because of society, how easy it is to learn stuff and communicate. In addition to your kids being away from you hours out of the day, so they spend more time with society than they are with you.
Yeah.
So my first question is, so what do you know?
Yeah.
That's-
So what do you know?
Right, let me build off that because there's no way I can start from scratch when I'm sure they've been introduced and hit with it from different angles.
Yes.
While I'm not there to, to help soften the blow, if that makes sense, but
Probably also, add on to yours, it's
Yeah.
also willing to share, like, these are my experiences, I've done this, like,
Mm-hmm.
you're asking me at these ages, like, some for my niece and nephew, like, oh, are you 16? Like, yeah, I was doing stuff at 14. Like, and you know what I mean? Like, but it's like kind of sharing them, like, don't be embarrassed about it,
right,
but understand, because it's significant.
Yeah. And I think when we are saying that, there are things to if you know a mistake that has been done by somebody, it doesn't have to warn somebody about a mistake. Let me scare you by saying this. You know I'm a counselor. This is not a secret. A gentleman suffered very greatly because of what he was trying to think is fun for himself. They were having sex with his girlfriend, and something jumped into his head that he could take a little video of it, and he did. The girl turned against him and said that is abuse. And she filed charges of it on him, and it did not end well. Actually, the guy ended up in jail. So a mistake. I think what do you think is the mistake there? What's the mistake?
Well, technically, it was not consent.
There
There's no
was no consent.
Mm.
There was no consent. And then, why are you taking the video? You intend to make it public? That is what do you call that? Breach.
Breach
Yeah.
of confidentiality.
But that's also considered in our laws that's called revenge porn. If you post something like that, then you can end up in hot waters for that.
Mhm.
Cut a story short. I had to work with that gentleman in his pain because he lost the college. You know, he was suspended
Mm.
from college, and he had to fight it out. To me, that's a mistake.
Mm.
I would teach kids when you have any relations with a lady, which is your girlfriend, your wife, honor her and keep it confidential. It's for the two of you, not for public.
Yeah.
I would teach them that and tell them you got to be careful about how. I think in this country there's something called indecent exposure, right?
Mhm.
If you would expose her like that, that's very indecent.
Mhm.
And that, I believe there's a law against that. So some of the things to teach the kids on that, and we're running late now, maybe 25. And number 3, which of the 25 would your wife say she needed most from you and why? Which one do you think she would say she needs most from you and why? One that jumps out of me is you are supposed to be the spiritual leader in our family. Which number is that? About being spiritual leader?
Number 2, that's spiritual responsibility.
A servant leader accepts spiritual responsibility for his family. Yeah. And he's the space setter. I think there was another one somewhere about there's one that was resonating with that. That you are really the priest in your house.
Yeah.
You're the one who should tell them, let's play. You're the one who should tell them,
Yeah,
hey,
servant leader prays with his wife on a regular basis. That's the one you're talking about.
that too is there, but taking the responsibility of also shepherding that family, making sure that there's the honor and respect for God. By the way, you have seen me inviting those of you who have been closer to me, you have seen whenever I'm doing services, Sunday service, Bible study, I invite my children. This is why I use gadgets like this. Like two of my children live in Florida.
Mhm.
I invite them, they come here or they come to Sunday service. Why do I do that? Because I'm trying to assume my role. And I want that also to remain in them.
Mhm.
Even though they could also go to church everywhere. In fact, they have other churches they attend to, but they also come to our service.
Mhm.
Any response to number 2, number 3?
My number 14, servant leader plans fun outing. Like I'm technically a boring dude, and I should not be known for that. I like my idea of fun is like going off in it all. Like that is super fun for me. But
Sleeping, bowling.
yeah, I mean I can do bowling. I'm not fun like when everybody want to do something. I'm down, but if it's up to me,
Yeah.
I'm good. This is fun, like this right here. So I just gotta stop being boring. But that's the one that stuck out to me that my wife would probably say I need to plan more hours because she's the one that plans the hours.
Mhm.
Yeah, take the lead and plan outings. Hey, Ronnie, you quiet, tell us something.
I'll piggyback on Ray. Our wives know a sentence. We can do some things.
Yeah.
They try to pull it out. And then, once we do it, we'll even be surprised. Like,
Yeah.
that was it,
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, that's all.
Thank you. So this lesson, there is more to say to it.